Hey there, and welcome to episode 6 of the Crossing from You to You. I'm your host, Samantha Dorita, also known as Miss.Mindful on Instagram. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the number one fear, the number one concern that people have when it comes to sobriety, and that's friendships and social life. People are afraid that they will lose their friends, that they will have no friends, and that their social life will completely disappear. So if you're sober curious and you're thinking about getting sober, or if you're newly sober and you're struggling a little bit with this, and it's a concern of yours, then this episode is for you. Tune in. We're going to talk about how sobriety changes your social circle, setting boundaries with friends, reconnecting with old friends in new ways, experiencing exile and loneliness, and navigating social anxiety without substances, inviting friends to shift with you, and also, this happens, grieving old friends. And I'm going to share my experiences with all of these things that I've learned along the way. So my name is Samantha Dorita, and I'm in recovery. I have 2.5 years and more, a little bit more than 2.5 years of sobriety. And I would love to share my definition of sobriety because I think we all have different ones. So for me, what I've come to over the years is sobriety for me, and what sobriety means to me is that I am free of all mind-altering substances. I'm not just free of alcohol. I'm not just free of weed. I'm not just free of psychedelics. I'm free of all of it. But it's all different for people because I eat sugar and that's something as well, right? And sometimes I have caffeine. So yeah, when I'm referring to sobriety, I am talking about being free from alcohol, drugs, and any mind-altering substances. Because from my experience, if I wasn't smoking weed, I was drinking. If I wasn't drinking, I was smoking weed. It would just hop from one thing to the next. And so eliminating it all was the way that worked for me, and it was the only way that was going to work for me. So if you're interested in hearing more about my story, episode 3 is on From Substances to Spirit. I recommend that you go check that out if you're curious about my story and how it all, how I came to sobriety and what it's been like for me. So when you make the decision to get sober, and I want to also add in here that you do not have to be an addict to be sober. People will say, well, I just don't use substances, but I'm not sober because I wasn't an addict. And I mean, for me, that's not true. I mean, sobriety is just your natural state without any substances inside of you. It has nothing to do with addiction. It literally just means that you are free from all mind-altering substances. You don't have to have had a problem with, drugs or alcohol to say that you're sober, right? Sobriety doesn't have to be for people doesn't have to be just for people that are addicts. I did not identify as an addict when I got sober. I don't identify as an alcoholic. I probably, most likely, probably 99% would have become one if I continued using. But I do identify as a marijuana addict, but I do also just say that I'm in recovery, right? So when you're making a life-changing decision to be free from all mind-altering substances, you're making a life-changing decision. And if you're making a life-changing decision, then everything is probably going to change in your life, right? So that's why there's this fear around if you're getting sober, well, what's your friendships going to look like? What's going to happen to your weekends? What's your social life going to look like? And most people just go to, straight to, I'm going to have no life, I'm going to have no friends, and I'm going to be completely alone. And I want to come on here and say that is absolutely not true. Yes, you may experience a certain amount of time where you're feeling lonely, where you're feeling like you're in exile, where you're feeling like you have no friends. But trust me, it's just a little period of time while everything's shifting. Sobriety will change your social circle, because if you're hanging around people right now today, and you have been in the past, with people that are smoking weed, with people that are drinking, with people that are partying and doing drugs, then you probably have friends that are doing the same thing, right? Usually we surround ourselves with people that are like us. And it's really interesting when I have met somebody in the past, when I've met friends and the people in the past that were strangers, the second we started using together, we became best friends, right? And just as fast as you become best friends, just based off the fact that you're both using or your group is using together in some way, shape, or form, as soon as you make the decision to stop using, sometimes, yes, those friendships disappear as fast as they started, right? So your social circle will absolutely change, right? If you're spending your weekends at the bar, if you're going over your friend's house every night, and you're toking up every single night, then yeah, that friend circle is absolutely going to change. It's normal and it's natural. And if you're trying to make a decision to change your life, then probably the people that you are hanging around with also will need to change and shift as well. So yeah, if you're thinking about getting sober, then this is absolutely going to be a reality for you where your friendships will change. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose your friendships whatsoever, but it is going to entail some sort of work for you to communicate with them. Some of them you will lose. And yeah, we're going to talk about these topics. I want to share a little story about mine. I remember when I was, one of my best friends, I remember the moment we met, she was like, yeah, I don't really drink that much, but I smoke a ton of weed. And I was like, we're going to be best friends because that's me. I freaking hate alcohol. But if you listen to my story towards the end, I didn't hate it as much and I was continuing to use it. And that was progressing. But I remember I was sitting down having a conversation. I had just gotten home from a retreat where I had this deep meditation and I got the message to get sober. Knew with every single cell, muscle, bone, every part of my body, I knew it was time. And I was just sharing my whole experience at this retreat, and we were, eye contact. We were locked in. We were having a beautiful, share. It was really a monologue. It wasn't really a conversation because I was sharing, and I was trying to get to the part of that I made this decision, and I was nervous to share this with my friend because that's really that was like the cornerstone, maybe the foundation of our relationship together. And so when I mentioned that I have made the decision to be free of alcohol and weed, for me, that's for the rest of my life, by the grace of God. Instantly, eye contact was lost. She started playing with her dog and I was still continuing to talk, but there was no eye contact. She was completely distracted. And, I felt so uncomfortable and I felt bad. I was like, wow, this is awful. My best friend has been locked in eye contact with me this whole entire time. And the moment that I share this news with her, she can't even look at me. And that was challenging for me. And, in that moment, I was just like, great, I don't know how this is going to go. And so I remember being on, this is another time I had left and in that conversation, I was sharing with her how things have changed for me and what I would like to change about my life and why I'm doing this. And here's the thing, you become a mirror, right? Because if you're like, okay, I had a problem with weed, I had a problem with alcohol, and you've been hanging out with this friend, you guys have been using the same amount, maybe they use more than you, maybe you use more than them, maybe you use the same amount, but literally you become a mirror because if you're saying that you had a problem, then they are thinking, oh, I must have a problem, so you become a mirror. I mean, I remember people that I was talking to, I'm like, yeah, I decided just, that I was going to get sober. And they didn't even say anything. The first thing they said was, oh, well, I don't really drink that much. And I don't really smoke that much, and it's like, I didn't say anything to make them say that. You just become a reflection. You become a mirror. And that is very challenging for some people. And it's very confronting for some people. And it's very triggering for some people. And that's definitely something that will happen along the way for you because you're setting out a new example for yourself and you were identifying with all these people and this lifestyle before and this using before. And now you're making a change and now it's just really confronting for the people that you were hanging out with, right? For family, for friends, for whoever. So I remember I was talking with a friend and they were sober as well. And I was saying, you know what? I just think I got to cut this person off. And they were like, that's an easy route. Do you want to take the easy route? And I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, you haven't even given this person or these people in your life a chance. You are just assuming that they can't shift with you. You are just assuming that because you're not drinking and smoking and using drugs anymore, that you can't have this friendship. And what's easy for you is just to cut that off so you don't have to deal with it. The work comes when you have to have a conversation, share what you need from the other person, share how you need to be supported, how you would like this relationship to be, and have a real freaking conversation with them, a real, authentic, vulnerable, and deep conversation with them. And so, yeah, I was literally about to cut this friendship off, and I was driving in the car, and I was on the phone with one of my friends, this person that was sober as well, and was like, yeah, I just don't think that this friendship's going to work anymore. It's not going to last. And so I got this advice. And so communicating with friends about your decision and speaking what you need from them is definitely the next step, right? Your circle's absolutely going to change. But sometimes you have besties and you're like not willing to let them go, or maybe they're even a family member and that's just non-negotiable for you. You're never going to just let them disappear from your life. You have to find a way to clearly communicate what you need, what you're doing, and how they can support you and what ways they can support you. So, having conversations and saying, hey, I have decided to not use, substances in my life. I still desire you to be my friend. I still want you to be my friend. I love you, X, Y, and Z. But here's what I need from you. If you don't want somebody to smoke in front of you, you have to communicate that. If you're cool with someone smoking in front of you, you have to communicate that, because I've struggled with the opposite end of the spectrum. I remember that this friend that I'm talking about and my sister, we were all hanging out, and I was staying up as late as I could, right? They were having drinks and I was just sitting there, I don't want to say I was just sitting there, but I was just hanging out and being a part of the group because I didn't want to feel left out. And it got super late and I was like, I just need to go to bed. I'm so freaking tired. And as soon as I went up to my bedroom, I heard the door open and I heard them go outside and start smoking. So for me, I was so upset because I was thinking, wow, they've been literally waiting for me to go to bed because they didn't want to hurt my feelings. They didn't want to do it around me. And so they, basically probably the whole time were just waiting for me to go to bed. Didn't want me to be around when they were doing it. And so I was super hurt. I just remember crying, like, wow, I'm just left out. I'm not a part of the circle, and I could have gone on with that story for a long, long time, but I chose not to. Here's the thing. You don't have to, but I strongly suggest that you have clear and open and honest and vulnerable and authentic conversations with those that you love. All of them. You try. You do what you can on your side to keep the relationship alive. You share what you need. You do everything that you possibly can to communicate it. And if they aren't able to live up to that, or if they're not able to shift into that, or they just don't understand that, then you have done your part. That is all you're responsible for. You're only responsible for your part in the relationship. But here's the thing. It's easy to just cut somebody off, right? And assume that they can't grow with you and assume that they're not capable of being the friend that you need them to be now that you're sober. But if you actually open up to them and share with them what you need, that's when relationships really have the opportunity to shift. Because like I keep saying, it's easy to cut people off. That's the easy route. You don't want the easy route. You want to try. You want to try with these people unless they're so toxic that you really need them out of your life. So anyways, I had a conversation the next morning and I shared with both of them, I'm really hurt that you guys waited for me to go to bed, because I remember what it was like when my parents were just hanging up super late, on vacation and stuff. And I would just be sitting there fuming. I'd be so mad because I'm like, it's getting so late. I don't want them to know that I'm going to smoke, so I need them to go to bed. And they would keep staying up and stay up and stay up. And I'd be literally fuming because they weren't going to bed so that I couldn't go get my high, or I couldn't go get my fix in some way. And so I was thinking, and I was projecting out there, that my friend and my sister were doing the same thing with me. Like they were just literally counting down the minutes until I went to bed. And I was trying to stay up as late as I could to hang out and be a part of the group. But I just got tired and had to go to bed. And then I was just so upset when literally instantly, a minute after I got upstairs, I heard them go out. And so it just brought me back to, when my parents would stay up late. So anyways, I talked to both of them. I'm like, hey, I feel really hurt by what happened last night. I know that I'm newly sober. You guys have no idea how to act around me. You don't know if it's cool if you smoke or drink around me. You have no idea like what I need. And so the thing is, everybody out here is just projecting. Everyone's thinking, okay, we can't smoke in front of her because she's going to be upset, or we can't smoke in front of her because it's going to be triggering for her, or we can't drink in front of her, like whatever it is, right? Everyone has their own freaking stories. And I was having my own story, and it wasn't until I could open up the conversation to be like, hey guys, I don't care if you guys smoke. I'm really hurt that you guys, didn't include me in this. Like, you guys can smoke around me. Like, that was fine for me. I just want to be a part of the group, and I want to be a part of the conversation. And so I had to, like I said, it's just, you got to be very clear about what you need from them, because they don't know what you need. They have no idea. And everybody in their sobriety is different. Some people aren't going to be able to sit around a group of people that are smoking and be cool at that, but it was my sister and my one of my best friends. So it's like, I was cool with that. That was fine. I didn't want to smoke. I had no desire to smoke. I had this message from God that I was supposed to get sober. And I was following that. There was no other alternative for me. There was no other thing there. So open, clear, honest communication is huge. Don't go cutting people off. Go out there and tell people what you need. Yes, you can smoke in front of me. Yes, you can drink in front of me. Or no, you can't do this. It doesn't feel good for me. Really get detailed about what you need from them, and then ask them what they need from you as well. Open that space up from them, They might need you to communicate with them more. They might need you to tell them, hey, this isn't comfortable for me, or whatever, because things are going to change over time, So communication is the biggest part when you're getting sober and you are, redefining your relationships with friends and with family. And I want to switch to another topic, is the being lonely, right? So there's this belief that when you stop using substances that you're going to be alone. You're going to have no social group. You're going to have no friends. And I want to share my experience with this, because my world was defined by my weed use. And on the weekends, it was a free-for-all with drinking and smoking. And then in the summers, I would always go to festivals and there would be drug use at those. So yeah, I stopped going to bars, which I was so excited about. I didn't want to do that shit anymore. I stopped hanging out in people's basements, or I stopped just everything I did. I was getting high for hikes and gatherings, and you name it. I was getting high for it. I was drinking for it. And so I went into a period of time where I was just in exile. I really had no idea what was happening. And at the same time, I don't want to say a spiritual awakening was happening for me. I literally felt like I was being unplugged from the matrix, and it was overwhelming. I had no idea about my life. I was wondering, whose life was I living? Whose life am I living right now? I woke up and just saw my false sense of self had created everything for me. I was a high school math teacher. I was living a couple minutes from my family. It just, I played college sports. I had all the degrees. I owned the house. It was just, I just woke up. I had a spiritual awakening from, getting sober. And I think that was why God had told me to get sober, because I was ready for that spiritual awakening. I had been on my spiritual awakening journey since I was 18. I did everything. I did the books. I did, the retreats. I did just all these different things to try to help myself awaken. And when I got that message from God to get sober, I had no idea that this was going to be the spiritual awakening and all the change that I had been seeking and yearning and looking for. And so I went into exile. I, was looking at every facet of my life, and I was blown away with how unaligned pretty much all of it was from me. Family's non-negotiable for me, so and both of my parents are in recovery, so I had never grown up around alcohol or drugs. Again, if you want to listen and tune into more of my story, head to episode 3. I share everything in there. But it was really, really, really challenging for me, and I had to just create space from everybody. I had to create space. I started going to AA meetings because I knew that that's somewhere that I could go. If my sister had people over and there was drinking and alcohol and weed and it was just loud music and I was uncomfortable, I would just go to a meeting. Or I would just go to my parents' house because I knew there was never alcohol and drugs there ever. So it was challenging. I put myself into a little bit of an exile. I was meditating all the time. I ordered $3,000 worth of sound healing bowls. I was journaling. I was going so deep into myself and getting to know myself, and so much was surfacing, so much emotion. I feel like I'm getting a little bit sidetracked. I could go on and talk about, how being unplugged from the matrix and, how that affected me and how much it had a huge, just so much change in my life. So let's get back to talking about exile and loneliness. So yeah, we're going to fast forward a little bit, but I was 9 months sober when I decided to leave everything, my job, my house, my family, my country. And I moved to Costa Rica. It was another one of those God moments that I had to move. I had to go there. And I was in exile. I didn't have many friends. I had no social media for a couple years. People didn't even know that I was living in Costa Rica. I really didn't shift my relationships that much. The ones that I needed to, I got to share and open communication with them, but it was really hard. And the one relationship that I had to reconstruct was the one with myself, right? That was the most important. And that's what I decided to focus on for, let's say, year and a half, maybe a year and a half. And so, I was living in Playas del Coco. I was still teaching, and I really didn't have any friends. I had a couple friends from work, but it was cool. Like, nobody knew me. Nobody knew the old me. Nobody knew me with using. I was able to go out with people, and there would be drinking, and I would just have my smoothie, and I would drive there and I would drive home, and it was great. Like, as soon as people started to get a little tipsy and stuff, I could just leave if I wanted to. And I loved that because I was sober and I could drive home and I didn't have to stay up late. And the next morning I would just feel so good. But I started to, for me, like, I guess what I can suggest is start to take, some sort of hold on and like control. I don't want to say control, but start taking like an authority of how you hang out. And instead, you want to go for a hike. For me, it was like, you want to go for a hike? Do you want to go for a walk on the beach? Do you want to go for a walk? I mean, not everyone lives on the beach, but do you want to go for a walk? I started having these sound healings that I would do at sunset, and I would invite all my friends to come. And so I was inviting them into my world. I was inviting them into meditation. I was holding space for them, helping them feel calm and relaxed. And then we'd all go out to eat after. And of course, the drinks and stuff would come out, but I would have my smoothie. I would be able to share with everybody. And it takes a little while for people to start feeling drunk and under the influence. So I got a good amount of time with them, got to share, got to talk to them. And as soon as things kind of started to turn a little bit uncomfortable for me, or I was just tired and it was too late for me, I would just go home. And so, yeah, taking authority over how you're hanging out, start suggesting different things. You want to go to a museum, you want to go hike a mountain, you want to go for a swim at the ocean, you want to go shopping, like just doing things that that don't have alcohol and drugs around. And maybe they do, and maybe you'll be comfortable with that. But if you're this is a very famous saying from the rooms of 12-step recovery programs is, if you keep hanging around at the barbershop, eventually you're going to get a haircut. And what that means is if you continue hanging around, the bars, and you continue hanging around all the weed and all the drug use and all those friends, then eventually you're going to start drinking, smoking, or using again. So yeah, if you're hanging around the barbershop, eventually at some point you're going to get a haircut for sure. So yeah, you just start taking authority over who you're hanging out with and like what you're doing. And so yeah, I was in exile. When I look back on it, I didn't know it in the moment, but I was in exile. I was really going deep and getting to reconstruct the relationship with myself. And I totally suggest that you do that as well. Start to learn who you are again. Start to feel those emotions that have been bubbling up for years and that you've probably just been pushing aside and numbing and suppressing because of your use. And I want to say that it's probably been happening unconsciously. For me, I had no idea. I was suppressing all of this stuff until I got sober, and I was just sitting. So many emotions would come up, and the first thought I had is, I just want to get high, or I just want to have a drink. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Okay, cool. So I haven't been feeling my emotions. So yeah, start to shift your relationship with yourself, get to know yourself, and have those conversations with the friends and the family that are super important to you, and have them shift into the space, or just have them know, or just tell them how they can be supportive for you. So yeah, back to loneliness and exile. I didn't feel lonely for a long time. And then I got to a point where I was lonely. I was crying on my kitchen floor for hours. I had no friends. And this was all my choice. I got let go from my teaching position. So all the girls that I hung out with from work, literally most of them stopped talking to me and didn't text me. And if I reached out a couple times, let's go for a walk, let's do this, it was like, they just eventually didn't, we never met up. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to continue putting energy in here if it's not being reciprocated. And that was cool for me. And the people that want to stay around, they'll check in on you. They'll say, hey, how are you? Want to do this? Let's go do this. Let's go to dancing. Let's whatever. You'll see really quickly who your real friends are. And the most beautiful part about sobriety is you just get a clean slate. You realize that the people that you probably were hanging around with aren't truly and deeply your friends, not nurturing and supportive and meaningful connections. And you don't want that shit in your life anyways, right? So if you feel like if you feel like the people that you were hanging out with no longer want to be friends with you and they're no longer reaching out to you, then great. That is such good news. Okay. And I'm not going to say it's not painful, because it can be painful. You're like, oh, I thought there was something there, but your life will start cleaning itself out, right? God has a way of filtering people in and out of your lives. And if you're full of friends, and you try to hold on to all of them and you try to keep them alive and you're doing all the work, then you're literally not creating space for the new friendships to come through. So you try as much as you can. And, a couple times, if people don't want to hang out with you and they're not reaching out to you, then it's time to let them go. Right. And there's, I've heard this before. The human condition is that we want something that we don't have, but we're afraid to let go of what we do have. So if we're not letting go of what we do have, then we're not creating space for the new to come in, the new friends to come in. So yeah, my exile and the loneliness that I experienced was very painful, and it was beautiful now that I look back on it in hindsight, because if I didn't feel that amount of loneliness, I didn't feel fully in exile and alone, like away from my family, away from my country, away from everybody, then I would not have been in so much, distress and uncomfortability and discontentness that it literally squeezed me to the core, and it squeezed me to moving locations, right? I had found myself in a comfort zone of living in Playa del Coco. Like, I knew the ocean, I knew the currents, I knew where things were in the grocery store. Like, that makes me feel really comfortable. I knew where the mechanic was. I knew if I needed something, where to get it. And I found myself in a comfort zone, but this uncomfortability that I was feeling of how alone that I felt, and it pushed me to moving into this really beautiful space that I'm currently recording this in Nosara, in Costa Rica. And so yeah, my loneliness and my lack of friends and everything. And again, this was a choice that I made. I chose to be alone. I chose to get to know myself. I chose to go into exile. I don't know if I chose all of that, but I think God was absolutely doing for me what I couldn't do for myself, and was putting me in a little cocoon phase, And so I'm super grateful for my loneliness and my exile that I did feel in, the first year and a half of sobriety, maybe 2 years of sobriety. Yeah, it was 2 years. So yeah, I got spit out of Coco and put into Nosara, and my intention to live in Nosara was sisterhood. I want sisters. I want friendships. I want beautiful, deep, meaningful connections. I want friends. I want people. And I started going to this meeting called Sober Surfers in Nosara, and it's 3 days a week, and I just met some really beautiful people. Today, I have so many people in my life that I love. I have friendships with people. Like, I actually have girlfriends, guys. If my family's listening to this, they're probably like, wow, that's a miracle. I just didn't give a shit about anybody when I was using. All I cared about was my family. I had them. I spent time with them and a couple friends, and that was it. Like, I literally didn't care about anybody else. I was just in my own little privately defined world alone in this, illusion, this what do we say? It's in Marijuana Anonymous, we say like this fantasy of functionality. I just didn't care. And so I finally got to a point where I was in so much it was just feeling so much loneliness and just was craving connection and community, which is so wild for me to say that today because, like I said, in the past, I just didn't care. I didn't care about anybody. I just cared about my family and my close friends, and that was it. And I didn't care about anything else. I didn't care about getting to know people at bars or whatever. Like, it was just my group and that was it. So yeah, I came to know Sarah, and I can say after 2.5 years of sobriety, I feel the most connected to people that I have ever felt in my life. My relationships with my family have been super deep. They've been shifting and changing, and I was always afraid of that, you know? But when we become more authentic, when we start shifting into who we actually are, people love that and people crave that, and the connections you have with people are so much deeper. Like my relationship with my mother is so deep, and the relationship with my father is super deep, and that's just really beautiful for me. And you know, with my sister, who I love dearly, like I left 9 months after I got sober, and I told you, as I shared earlier, like I separated myself from everybody because I just didn't know what was happening. I just needed to go inward. And so I'm still shifting relationships to this day, and will continue to do that. And so with my sister, that is absolutely something that I am desiring to deepen and connect more with. And same thing with my brother as well. And like I said, some friendships just had to disappear after having multiple conversations about what I need, and sometimes I just have to go. But maybe it's not forever. Who knows, right? We don't have to just close the door. We just speak what we need, and if it doesn't work out for them and it's just not working out for you, then there's just some space in between. Who knows what happens in the future? You never know. And so yeah, today I feel the most connected. I have girlfriends. It's just really beautiful. I can't believe the life that I have today. And I think what happens with so many people that even just try out sobriety, they really believe that their social life disappears. And in my experience, it did. It did. But if we don't have patience, if I didn't have patience, if I just said, F this, I'm going to go back to my using because I have no friends, I have nothing going for me, then I would have just slid back into that life that was just not resonating with me, and with people that weren't, not that I didn't care about, because I cared about them in those moments, but people that really weren't nourishing for me and my soul. Like, it was just don't want to say it was a waste of time. I don't want that for myself anymore. So if you're in sobriety, early sobriety, and you're feeling lonely and you're feeling like people don't understand, you're feeling like you're in exile, it's okay. And it's so freaking normal. It's so normal. But if you just hang on and you just keep doing what's best for you, you keep putting one foot in front of the other, you keep openly communicating and being authentic and sharing what you need and asking from people what you need and telling people the support that you need and how they can be around you with their using and you being sober, you just keep trying. And again, you'll let people go, and it will make room for people to come into your life. And it is so beautiful when those people come into your life, because you get to start clean. You get to choose, like, wow, I'm actually really connecting with this person. It's not that I'm connecting with them because we were just getting high together, drinking and having a good time. You really connect with them, and then you can really start to build your life and your community. And if you're looking for community, I can't say this enough, but Alcoholics Anonymous and Marijuana Anonymous have changed my life, right? If you're going to meetings, you're saying they're not working for you, then that means you haven't gone to enough. You haven't tried different ones, right? You just keep trying, you keep trying, and you keep trying, and eventually it will come. And if you're feeling really frustrated, pray about it. I prayed about it. I was visualizing it in my meditations. I was talking about, I was visualizing this community that I was going to have. I was visualizing these friends that I was going to have. I was visualizing this one best friend that I was going to have. And literally months later, it all came true for me. But if I had just given up and gone back to using because I didn't have a social life, then I would never have been reaping the benefits of all of that waiting time and all of that time. It wasn't even waiting time. I got to know so much about myself, and that's what's important. If you don't know yourself, how can you get to know anybody else? If you don't know what you like, how do you know what friends to find that like the same things, right? So start with yourself. Communicate to the people that are closest to you, and just be patient. Be patient. And another topic I would love to chat about is navigating social anxiety without substances. So I shared a little bit on here, but one of my biggest suggestions is that you show up early to events where people are drinking and you leave when you get uncomfortable, right? If you feel like you have to drink or use any sort of substance to just tolerate and be around the people that you're around, then you probably aren't supposed to be hanging out with them. If you need to be under the influence in order to hang out with these people or in order to go to this event or whatever it is, then these are not your people. If you have to alter your state to be around these people, to fit in with them, to feel connected, to feel a part of, then this is not your group. This is literally a sign that these aren't your people. Okay? So, and that can be challenging and that can be tough. But say it's something like a wedding where people are drinking, right? Maybe you invite a friend with you that isn't, that is also sober too. Or maybe you just show up early and then when it gets a little wild, you leave. Like as soon as you get uncomfortable, you just leave and that's it. And you might cry about it. You might go home and feel lonely and that's okay. It's all a part of this process. It's all a part of shifting your life. From the beginning of this podcast, I talked about how sobriety changes your social circles and how it changes literally every aspect of your life. It takes time for things to shift. Things shift slowly. You're getting to know yourself. You're getting to know what you like again. You're getting to know everything again. You're new. You're clean. And you're seeing through a different lens. And everything just takes time. So patience is the number one key here. And another one is prayer. Pray about it. Talk to God or whatever you call it. Talk to God. Pray about it. Talk to other people with your loved ones. Find people, go to meetings, find people on meetings, at meetings, start hanging out with them, see what they're doing, get a sponsor. There's so many things you can do out there, but the biggest thing that I can say is patience, because some of this stuff is true. You do lose friends. What do you do what do you do when you lose friends? You just have to grieve them. You just have to grieve that old part of your life. And like I said before, you might have a couple years where you don't speak to this friend, you're not as close anymore, but who knows, maybe in a couple years they decide to get sober and then you're the one that's helping them through it and and you reconnect. You have no idea what can happen in life. And so, to conclude all of this here of how sobriety changes your social circle, like communicating with friends about you getting sober and having those open and honest and clear talks with them, talking about loneliness and exile and navigating social anxiety and then grieving old friendships and opening up space for new ones. Like this is a real thing, if you're concerned about, losing your friends and you're concerned about what your life's going to look like, just know that it's going to change, but just know that it also is going to take time, and just know that it's a really good thing that this happens. You want this to happen. You actually need this to happen if you want to maintain your sobriety and you want to continue changing your life. And so if you have any questions about this, please, please, please reach out to me at miss.mindful on Instagram. Please, it's not weird if you reach out to me. I love receiving messages from people that are that have listened to the podcast and just want to connect or just want to ask questions. It absolutely makes my heart happy. So please, please, please connect with me. If any of this resonated with you, if it helped you in any way, or if you still have more questions or you've tried some of these things and they haven't worked, please connect with me. I am Samantha and I am in recovery, and I am also a sobriety and awakening coach. I use sobriety as the vehicle to awaken to your whole entire life, to awaken to yourself, to awaken to your fullest potential so that you can start living the life that you were meant to live. You can find purpose, you can find alignment, you can find meaning, you can find depth, you can find everything that you have come to earth to figure out. And I've done it through the vehicle of sobriety. And now I'm coming back to help other people do it too, because I had no idea what I was doing when I got sober. I just knew I had to do it. I had no idea that this is what was going to awaken me. And removing the substances is the easiest part of getting sober, right? We can all remain abstinent from substances. It is the getting to know yourself. It is redesigning your life, reconstructing your life, shifting your relationships. There's so much more to it than just stopping using substances. And if you're feeling like you need support, I have a program. It's actually the name of this podcast as well. It's called The Crossing from You to You. If you go onto my Instagram, there's information about it. If you just want to reach out and see, and want to learn more about my my program and how I work with people to use sobriety to help them awaken, please reach out. It's such a pleasure to connect with you. Thank you so much for your time, for listening, and for tuning in. And I appreciate you, and I'm sending you many blessings, a big hug, and a big kiss. Ciao.